Well, this week has not been a very good week for planes here in the United States. First, we had the uh, horrendous mid-air collision the other night between the American Airlines flight 5342 with the Black Hawk helicopter. Now, I've seen the footage. The Black Hawk helicopter is the one that hit the plane. Now, uh, last night we had a plane crash down in North Philly. So, exactly what is going on with these planes?
Appreciate it. Let's bring in MSNBC's Ali Velshi on the phone. Ali, this is a nightmare that seems to be metastasizing in Philadelphia. You can see these balls of flames that we were just talking to Tom Costello about. This is near the Roosevelt Mall. So now we're talking about the potential for injuries on the ground. Obviously, injuries from that plane or fatalities in both circumstances. This seems like a bad time to have utter chaos in the federal government and at the FAA.
Yeah, this is a really complicated matter because Northeast Philadelphia Airport falls under the Philadelphia Aerodrome. So the larger air traffic control area that controls that area is Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Tower. It's responsible for a lot of incoming and outgoing flights anywhere into the region. It's a pretty busy airport. Actually, this flight was coming in from Morristown, New Jersey, as Tom was saying. These Learjets are equipped because of the size of them and the range that they can fly. They're equipped to put medical patients on. They can put stretchers on them. A very unusual situation because to fly a Learjet, your qualifications have to be pretty high. So we're not quite sure, and we never like to speculate this early into an accident as to what could have happened. But it does seem to have overshot the runway, and when you do that, you end up in first of all a pretty residential area in northeast Philadelphia. So it's densely populated. You know, one of the good fortunes we always see when a plane doesn't land exactly where it's supposed to be is that often it's in an unpopulated area. Yeah, that's not the case here. This is a populated area. Roosevelt Mall is obviously a busy place. I'm looking at aerial shots right now, and there are closures all around the area because this is a big concern. It's also a very short journey on an aircraft that is very powerful, and because it's a jet, carries a great deal of fuel. Jet fuel is very flammable, so this has the potential to be much more serious than that looks at the moment. We do know what we know right now is it does seem to have been on a medical mission coming from Morristown, New Jersey. Very short flight, not long at all, but that's often the case with these medevac flights or these things in which they're moving patients. But yeah, this has landed outside of a fairly busy airport. Northeast Philadelphia is the second busiest airport in the Philadelphia metro area, but they all fall. I've flown out of the Philadelphia regional airports a lot. They all fall under Philadelphia. So any air traffic control information you need, if you're flying out of any of these small airports, it gets governed by the ATC and the controllers that deal with Philadelphia Airport because it's all in very similar related airspace. And it is incredibly busy airspace. Obviously, for those of us who live in New York, you have three major airports and a bunch of subsidiary airports. So there's probably no busier airport. We've been talking about DCA with Reagan. There are three major airports in that area and a lot of subsidiary airports. This area around Philadelphia has a lot of them. So this is a busy airport area. It's a busy area for air flights. And it is sadly an area where if a plane does overshoot or something happens and it doesn't land on the pad of the airport, there's a great deal of danger of getting into an occupied area where people live. One of the instructions pilots always have when they're having a problem landing or taking off, when you're that close to the ground, it's the most dangerous aspect of flight, both taking off and landing. And the instruction a pilot always has is you fly that plane until it's not flyable anymore, until it's onto the ground. But if you are taking off or landing in an area where you're running out of runway and there's nothing there, you aim that plane to the place where you are going to cause the least amount of damage. They say if there's houses, aim between houses. If there's trees, aim between trees. Try and get that plane to where it has to go so that when that fire comes up, it's the most important thing. And when a plane's going down, in your training, and if you're a Learjet pilot, you've got a lot of training. One of the things you learn is you turn everything off, including the fuel, because the biggest danger, you can land a plane sometimes successfully in a crash. The biggest danger is a fire. Once the plane has caught fire, you not only are in severe danger inside that plane and all the passengers are in severe danger, but so is everybody around you. And unfortunately, this very preliminary reporting is that this is what has happened. Obviously, we're seeing images of it, so we know that this is what has happened. The thing that every pilot fears, and that is a fire on landing, on crashing, or any time during flight. That's the most serious, most difficult thing to get out of. So we don't know whether that crash was survivable when it landed, but that kind of fire makes it look very, very concerning.
Yeah, indeed. I'm just going to give some updated information I want to give to the viewers. There were 2 people on board that aircraft. It was en route to Springfield Branson National Airport in Missouri. That is according to the FAA. And just to continue on what you're saying, Ali, because what we're looking at here is not just the flames, but also the smoke. And I can only imagine how toxic that smoke is from jet fuel, especially since, as you said, this plane had just taken off. That means it was full of fuel. And so I'm wondering, those houses look really, really close. And the danger to people there, not just from potential fire, but also from smoke.
Yeah. And the spread of fire, as we watched in Los Angeles, right? When you're in an urban area and homes are very, very close together, there's all these sort of fantasies about how you make sure that home fires don't spread to other places by having brush that's not too clear to your, close to your house, and 100 feet, 200 feet. That's not how it works in a place like Northeast Philadelphia. These are heavily populated areas. Homes are very, very close together. So it's not a situation where 1 or 2 houses are on fire. You're safe. This is going to be a full fire response in the area, because they're going to have to make sure that everything on every block in that area isn't there, and the embers from the fire don't end up on someone else's house and creating a much, much bigger problem. As I say, when you're thinking about a plane crash, it's a terrible, terrible thing. But you hope, and it's what all pilots do. They all try and say, if this plane is going down, how do I get it to go down with the minimal impact, both obviously to the people on board, but to the people on the ground, and that always has to do with fire. So there's only so much you can do. You can turn the fuel off in a plane, but once it crashes, very, very easy to ignite that fuel, and that plane would have been a plane with probably fully fueled. Small planes don't tend to fly around without full fuel if they can avoid doing so, because it's a safety mechanism. On large planes that are going across the country, they tend not to have more fuel than you need, but on a small plane, you have to have at least half an hour more fuel than you would need to complete the trip that you filed for. So it's possible that that plane was going to refuel somewhere along the line, but that's a lot of fuel that's already on the plane, and that's burning. And once that fuel gets onto things around it, there's very little firefighters can do except try and provide for the area around it to hope that fire doesn't spread.
Ali, please stay with me. I want to bring back in Randy Babbitt, former administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. He joins me on the phone. Mr. Babbitt, thank you for coming back. We appreciate you spending some more time with us. There are still bodies being recovered in the Potomac from the crash that took place between that airplane and chopper, that fatal.
Yes, they have recovered 41 of the 67 bodies from the Potomac
crash, and now there is a second plane down within just a couple of days. What will the FAA be doing in the immediate aftermath? What is the job? Walk us through what the FAA would be doing regarding this plane that has gone down in Philly.
Well, first, I guess I'm spending my afternoon and evening with MSNBC, but and I know President Little, to be very candid, this accident was just obviously very recent, but the FAA, the first thing they would do is try to get all the records, talk to the tower personnel, what was the weather conditions. They're certainly going to coordinate with the NTSB, who will actually be charged with investigating the accident. But the FAA has accident investigators as well, and they'll try to ascertain as much data as they could. They'll certainly record the tracks. My understanding is this aircraft shot an approach, and it was a medevac airplane, if I understand correctly, and it overshot the runway.
It was.
There's a little bit of history. It's sort of a blessing and a first, the medevacs, it's always an emergency condition. You have someone, you're either going to go get someone from an accident or you're taking someone from an accident. And they're obviously, because we're flying them in and out, they're not healthy. They've been injured. And so a lot of times these groups, the medevac pilots, sort of push the edge of the envelope to make sure they can get somebody to a hospital in sometimes marginal conditions, candidly. And I don't know what the weather. I live close enough to know that it's raining here, so it was probably a wet runway. And they trying to get on the ground to get some people some emergency help, and something went wrong.
Eyewitness account now. Philadelphia resident Lindy Lee joins us now. Lindy, describe what you saw and heard last night.
David, thank you so much for having me. My dad and I were actually on separate paths, and he got closer to the blast zone, and he shared footage with me that we're not able to share because it's so deeply traumatizing and graphic. After seeing it, I frankly wanted to vomit. It's just so gruesome. I wasn't able to get in because I was heading that way, and the police were asking us to turn around. All I saw was the fireball. I actually didn't know it was a plane crash initially because I just saw the aftermath, and I had to scroll through my phone and ask people around me what exactly happened. It wasn't abundantly clear to me upon impact what was the cause of the fireball. It was just a scene from hell. It was just so gruesome, and we're just shell-shocked. I haven't slept. It's just been, I can't imagine what the families are going through right now.
It's just a nightmare for everybody involved, even just the eyewitnesses, let alone the people who were actually injured or hurt by this, or even worse. Did you see anybody that was hurt on the ground?
Yes, actually. People who were struck by random, I don't know what they were struck by, but it looks like they were hit by something. I think a lot of the debris was scattered over a huge surface area. I even saw someone say that they were hit by something coming in through a restaurant window. Like a part of the plane hit one of the guests in a restaurant a quarter of a mile away.
Incredible.
So just think about the radius. It was very significant.
Now,
And my family owns a church on the same street. And
Yeah.
we're going to do a program for kids today, but there's no way we're going to have kids in that area today, especially, given all the debris scattered around.
by the way, this is a very special community. I'm told by other people that, and I've seen interviews with folks saying how much the community gets together. Did you see that action at the time this was happening? People joining in and trying to do everything they could to help.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I love Philadelphia. I've been here all my life, and you really hit on it. And we've already been incredibly united over the past couple of weeks because of all the Eagles mania. But last night, we were able to embody that love and compassion for each other to an unprecedented degree. There was so much kindness and love among strangers, people that we haven't even met. And it just shows that we truly embody our name, the city of brotherly love.
Well, thank God for that, Lindy. But our hearts go out to you. It's going to be tough times over the next couple of weeks, and we wish you all the best. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much,
it.
David.
Absolutely.
Joining us now is Todd Yeary. He's a former air traffic controller and is now a pastor at Douglas Memorial Community Church. I want to ask you, we've got these two really terrible tragedies just days apart, but the situations are very different. And I want to start with the crash last night in Philly. According to audio transmissions, the air traffic controller, it sounds like they tried to get in touch with the pilot of this medevac flight, but apparently there was no response, and the Learjet crashed within minutes of taking off. How unusual is it as a controller not to hear anything at all back from the pilots, and does that indicate anything to you?
Thanks for having me. It is extremely unusual, and what it says, particularly in the incident that occurred last evening, is that whatever contributed to the loss of control and the devastating crash that took place in Philadelphia happened pretty quickly. From what I've been able to hear, I do know that there was a takeoff clearance issued It was accepted. The flight did indeed take off. And then after reaching an altitude of, I believe, about 1,600 feet, something occurred. We don't know whether that occurrence was mechanical in terms of flight controls. It may have been the power plant. It could have been something on the flight deck. But whatever it was, it happened with very little response time available to the crew to be able to correct whatever anomaly may have been taking place. And so what it says to me as a former controller is that air traffic control is a dynamic reality. Things can change suddenly without any warning, and in a matter of just mere seconds, you could go from what is otherwise a routine shift or a routine day to a catastrophic incident, as we saw last night and earlier this week.
And a catastrophic night in DC. I want to ask you now about that plane crash. We're still waiting for the NTSB's investigation and the data from those black boxes. But according to publicly available data reviewed by NBC News, it suggests the helicopter may have been flying too high at the time of the crash. In DC, you see these helicopters kind of in the flight path all the time, but they're supposed to stay around 200 feet. In that case, if that was the case, what should the air traffic controller do in that situation? Can you take us through what you perceive could have happened above the Potomac on Wednesday night?
Well, let me not so much deal with perception. Let me deal with the information that I have heard. When we first heard the clip of the controller asking the crew of the Black Hawk helicopter, do you have the RJ in sight? That's what I often call like showing up in the middle of the movie. There's some transmission that occurred before that is essential to know why that transmission was issued when it was. If you go back, and I believe I've heard a clip where what we would call in air traffic is calling traffic. Traffic was called to the Black Hawk helicopter to advise that the RJ was on a course for runway 33, and at that time was at about 1,200 feet. The Black Hawk crew requested permission, authorization to maintain visual separation from the aircraft, which means that the crew was accepting responsibility to steer clear of the path and the RJ that is now on what we would call short final. So whatever happened there after that was all authorized. When you hear that second transmission, it is because the controller is noticing that the paths are still converging and quite possibly the altitude is now changing, which caused the controller to ask to verify whether or not the Black Hawk crew still had the regional jet in sight.
The other part of this that's drawing a lot of focus is there's a preliminary report from the FAA saying that there was only one air traffic safety controller in the tower at the time. And, this staffing is acceptable under FAA safety standards, but the source calls it not normal. Does it sound problematic to you to only have one individual kind of, guiding all this traffic at a very peak time at a busy airport?
Well, not normal is a situational assessment. I don't have enough information to really determine one way or the other. What I do know is in my career, there were times when we did combine or consolidate positions. We reallocated resources based on available staffing or volume. There may have been a need or an opportunity to consolidate just to be able to preserve the controllers that are available for the times that may be peak. So I don't know how many other positions were being staffed at the time. I can't really say what else might have been going on. What I do know is that there's more information that's needed before we reach any conclusions.
Of course, and we'll keep an eye on all of it. Todd, thank you so much for joining us.
What do you guys think is going on with these plane crashes as of late? Now, yes, they have recovered 41 of the bodies from the Potomac, and they're going to have barges coming in as early as tomorrow to help pull the wreckage of the plane out. And they have also recovered the Black Hawk today, as well as the black box from the Black Hawk. And they've recovered the two black boxes from the American Airlines flight 5342. And they've now also retired 5342, and they state they do that whenever something like this happens, they'll retire the number and then they'll come up with a new number. The new number is 5467, and that's going to be the plane from now on that goes from Wichita uh, to Washington D.C. Now, see, personally, I think uh, until this investigation is over with, they should have went ahead and just postpone the flights from Wichita to D.C. until this investigation is over with. And we don't even know exactly how long this investigation is going to take. Um, and I've heard that, yeah, there was a U.S. Olympic figure skating team on that flight, and they weren't just from the U.S. There was some Russian figure skaters on there too, along with their relatives. I think it was either their relatives or one of their parents. So, yeah, my heart goes out to the families uh, of the figure skaters, as well as my heart goes out to the families of everyone that was lost that day. And oh, hey, Jim. Yeah, I mean, it was totally avoidable. You know, this mid-air collision was totally avoidable. Um, and they are stating it was the Blackhawks' fault. Uh, because the Black Hawk could have either went higher or went lower. Um, I'm still trying to figure out. After seeing the footage of that Black Hawk flying into the side of the plane, why was the Black Hawk on the same level as the plane? Why wasn't it? Because most Black Hawk helicopters they're flying higher. They're flying higher than the planes. I'd like to know that exactly why the Black Hawk was flying at the same altitude of the regional jet. Can someone tell me that in the live chat, please? I just I just don't understand it, guys. I really don't. And then last night you had another plane. It went down in North Philly, and I mean you could clearly see it freaking nose dived. Yeah, it went straight down. So exactly, what is going on here, guys? I mean, yeah, two aircraft crashes uh, in like less than 2 days. You had the midair collision on Wednesday, and then last night you had the plane go down in Philly. Or and we don't. We do know that there was a lot of people injured on the ground from all the debris from the plane, but we haven't heard yet. but we have our president who's blaming these crashes on DEI initiatives. I don't. All I know is my heart goes out to the families of the 67 plus now what's going on in Philly, because we don't know if anyone died there in Philly. I mean, what's going to happen here? This is almost like a freaking true crime case. Yeah, it's the who done it. I mean, it's the who done it. Well, we know with the mid-air collision there in over the Potomac, it was the Black Hawk helicopter. Because they're stating it was the Black Hawk helicopter's fault. But we don't want to be cop outs for what happened. We don't want to blame a dead pilot, which is the Black Hawk pilot. We don't want to blame a dead pilot for the tragedy that happened that night, because we don't know exactly what happened. We don't know what happened with the Black Hawk pilot. So how can we blame the pilot? I mean, could it have been pilot error? Yes, it could have been pilot error. But you don't want to sit there and blame a military serviceman for what happened that night, because we don't know. I'm proud to live in a country where we know that our rights are defended by our military. But I mean, yes, accidents do happen. Pilot errors do happen. It just happened that night. It took the lives of the Black Hawk crewmen, as well as the passengers and crew on flight 5342. And yes, I did. I attended the vigil yesterday for the passengers and crew of flight 5342, and it was I don't cry easily. I don't. But I took my daughter to the vigil yesterday, to show our respects. And my daughter she goes, "Daddy, I've never seen you cry before." I said, well, a lot of good people lost their lives, in a situation which was easily avoidable. And I'm going to say it again, it was easily avoidable. The Black Hawk could have flown higher or flown lower. Why was it on the same flight path as the regional jet? And hopefully the black box they recovered from the Black Hawk and the two black boxes they recovered from the passenger jet will give us some answers exactly what happened. Because all you heard was the air traffic controller asking the Black Hawk if they still saw the RJ, regional jet, and then about 10 seconds later, that's when the crash happened. And it was a training flight, and they were supposed to be using night vision. And why are you if it was a training flight for the Black Hawk, why aren't you going to use your night vision, especially flying around, as a regional airport? I mean, this could have been, out of all the other planes that take off and land at the airport, this could have been any one of those planes. Why are you flying at the same level as a passenger airline and you're military? It's a question you got to ask yourself. Yeah, and for like the last 2 days, I've been asking myself, why are they flying so close? I mean, this could have been a very easily avoided collision. I'll say that. This collision that happened Wednesday night was avoidable. Yeah, and I hate the fact that all those people lost their lives, and a lot of them were young. I mean, they were on the U.S. Olympic figure skating team, and there was actually a competition here in Wichita this past weekend. And quite a few of quite a few of the people from Wichita that I talked to yesterday said that they were all, because they had a chance to meet them, and they were all very nice. They were all hoping to be on the next Olympic team, like they were on the last one for the Winter Olympics, and quite a few of them they said were like young, like 18, about 10, yeah, because there was about, I think, 10 or 20 of them on that plane, and a lot of them were like barely 20 or barely 25. And I mean, there was a few older ones on the jet. They were like in like 25 up to 30, but that's still young. They had their whole lives ahead of them, and now it was just snuffed out just like that. And that's why I keep thinking this almost sounds like a true crime case, even though it's not, but it does sound like it sometimes, because you had the whodunit that night. On Wednesday night, you had the whodunit. Was it pilot error on the passenger plane, or was it pilot error on the Black Hawk? Oh, really, Melissa? My ex-boyfriend worked at a company that built different parts for commercial airplanes, and I can tell you that when the is in an airplane crash, the forensic analysis is quite different. How different, Melissa?
File free in the app if you didn't use this last year. Just file with TurboTax Do It Yourself by February 18.
Hello, Sherelle Parker, Mayor, City of Philadelphia. Let me just start by thanking you all for being here. Today is Saturday, February the 1st. I want to give you an overview of where we stand. This remains an ongoing investigation, so the situation remains fluid and active. Our Philadelphia Police Department, our Fire Department, Office of Emergency Management, first responders, with all of our local, state, and federal partners, they all work through the night at this crash site. I want to personally give my deepest thanks to each of them and my gratitude for their persistence. At this point, we can confirm that there were 6 souls on board the plane that crashed on Cottman Avenue last evening. A pediatric patient, their mother, and a 4-person flight crew. This was a medical transport plane that took off from our nearby Northeast Philadelphia airport, and it was only afloat for a very short period of time before something went terribly wrong and it crashed. The aircraft, a Learjet 55, it was en route to Missouri, according to our Federal Aviation Administration. I want to be very clear that the city of Philadelphia, we mourn their loss, and they are in our thoughts and in our prayers. We can also confirm that at least one other person perished in this tragedy, and this individual was in a car. We can confirm that there are also a number of other victims who were injured in this incident, and they are being treated in area hospitals. And thus far, our count is that there are 19 injured victims. But again, this is not etched in stone. The investigation is ongoing.
Leadership matters in moments of crisis, and demonstrated here by Sherelle Parker, our mayor. I also want to reaffirm what the mayor said about everybody working together with common purpose.
I will say this, I'm glad I don't fly. I don't like flying. I was flown, I was 10 years old. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I'm 52 now.
Saturday, February 1st. I'm Stephanie Bertine with Fox 5 News. Thank you for joining us live here on the Fox Local. Hanging around the mid, we could see a few flakes tomorrow. According to the State Office of Cannabis Management, Long Island is seeing the highest number of cannabis sales per store across New York. Fox 5's takes a closer look at what's driving this boost in business.
Yeah, I don't think I want to show that.
Supercharge your business with the all-new Shopify point of sale.
Yeah,
The all-in-one POS solution built on the world's most powerful commerce platform. Whether